What if the most powerful leadership strategy isn't authority, but heart? Today on the Lead with Hope podcast, I'm joined by the right leader, Vernon Wright, for a conversation that goes straight to the core of what it means to lead with authenticity, growth, and purpose. Before we get started, I want to thank our legacy partner, Craig Williams, founder of Conversary. At Spark Hope, we believe story matters because story shapes how we lead, how we connect, and how we show up in the world. Conversary helps authors and leaders bring clarity to their story and confidence to their voice so that their brand truly reflects who they are. You can learn more about their work by visiting the link in today's show notes or on the Spark Hope website. Thank you, Conversary, for supporting the Lead with Hope podcast. Vernon, it is so wonderful to have you on the Lead with Hope podcast. One of the first things I like to do is just give you an opportunity to introduce yourself and share with the listeners who you are, where you're coming from.
Well, the first thing I want to say is what an honor it is to be here with you, Dr. Brandi, and just your whole audience. How many of you know that when you're in the space with great people, it helps for you to be great? And we all know that really the aim and goal in life is for us to be the best version of ourselves, not just for us, but more importantly, so that we can help to elevate humanity. The name, of course, is Vernon Wright, as some folks know me on social media across the different platforms, Instagram and LinkedIn. The Right Leader, TheWrightLeader, The Right Leader, and of course the website, therightleader.com. And connector, promoter, mentor, dare I say, hype man. I love to hype people and to hype the great work that they are doing. Honored and privileged to serve in a variety of different spaces, including being the president of the Texas Wesleyan University Alumni Association Board of Directors. That's a mouthful, but a lot of stuff there. I want to give them a shout out there. Go Tex West. I also serve on their School of Business Advisory Board. And as well, great honor. That's my undergraduate alma mater. My graduate alma mater is American College of Education. Let's go Ace. Give them a shout out as well. And honored to be an alumni influencer for them. And really, in total, a person who has a great passion. I was just talking to someone else very recently, about Daniel Pink and his book Drive. And that was a monumental book in my life. Some of you may have read that. Some of you may have met Daniel Pink. I have not. If you have, please tell me how it was. But when he talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, I had learned a lot of things up to that point, but I did not know that. And that was around about the time frame of 2011, 2012. And that was when I was pursuing my master's degree in leadership back then through ACE. So just a person who wants to go ahead and help other people be better using the gifts and talents that God has given me. Such an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much.
We met at NCMLE, the North Carolina Middle Level Educator Conference, just this year.
Yes, we
And
did.
it was such an honor to connect with you. You brought your daughter with you, such a lovely young lady. And it was just great to have the conversations that we were able to have at that conference. And one conversation that we had, Vernon, you and I talked a lot about self-awareness and the importance of truly knowing who you are at the core. You know, you've got to know yourself to grow yourself. And so talk to us a little bit about your journey in leadership and the lessons you have learned specifically around that topic of self-awareness.
Well, I'm going to use a little bit of pop culture and obviously use some, as we call this locally, we call them Arby's, not Arby's the restaurant, but research-based instructional strategies, or in essence, just things that are research-based. Kind of use a combination of the two. Dare I say, for you grammatical experts, I believe the word is amalgamation. We're going to kind of put those things together. So in that, I believe that there is always a plan in our lives, and sometimes we don't necessarily see that in real time. My late father used to always tell me, he said, son, you must think in two time frames. And of course, I was a little guy at the time and had hair back then. And he told me, he said, son, you must always see what's happening right now in real time, which most people see. He said, but what most people fail to see or to even think about is the long term beyond that down the road. And so grateful to have had him in my life. Wonderful, wonderful human being. And really, in essence, someone who inspired me. And he did not have much of a formal education. I want to go ahead and say that right now. You may be thinking, well, Brandi has got her doctorate and she's, has all these certificates and certifications. And Vernon, is an undergraduate and graduate and all of this other kind of stuff. You can truly have an impact right where. So with that, when I was going through this process of really kind of formal education, I came across something that was very impactful, very, very, very impactful. And I want to share it here with your audience. And that was a book. I'm just referencing a few books here. You folks may have read these books and had the books autographed by authors. If you do, and if you have, please forgive me. But for those of you who have not, another book that was really a seminal book in my life, and that is a book called The 5 Levels of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. That too was in my master's thesis. And that book really introduced me to John C. Maxwell. Later on down the road, I found out one of the reasons why it introduced me to John C. Maxwell. And it is simply this concept that he talks about often, which is the law of the lid. And so if I never stopped as a leader, because how many of you know, going to be honest here with Dr. Brandi's audience, how many of you know that some people, their thinking is, let me get to a position. Once I get to the position, I'm going to hit cruise control. I'm good for the rest of my life. That is not the way to do it, folks. You always have to be reflecting and refining. And one of the things that I share with students, undergraduate students at Texas Wesleyan, all of the time, particularly in classes in the School of Business, shout out to Dr. Reed, who is one of our favorite professors. She's such a guru. It's such an honor to speak to her classes. Is I talk to them about the concept of the Japanese word Kaizen, Kaizen. And with Kaizen, the working definition I've always held for that over the years has been simply this: reflecting and refining. So there's never a time when we stop learning. We should always be lifelong learners. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my guy, Dr. George Valenzuela. He, of course, is deep in the space with us, the fellow speaker in leader space, doing great work. And he asked me some time ago, and I'll share it with your readers as well, what was really, for me, a learning experience. We always learn from each other. And he asked me, he said, you know what, Vernon, he said, I have a question for you. And I was going, okay, well, hopefully I have an answer. And he asked me, he said, what is the biggest flex in life? And I was thinking, okay, well, most folks would say, I have money, I have cars and, family and so forth and so on. Those things that are things that most people would think about. And he gave me an answer. He gave me a response that I didn't necessarily see as being the most obvious. But how many of you know that sometimes the things that are the most subtle are most significant? And he said, Vernon, the biggest flex in life is being coachable. And if you're not a lifelong learner, you're not gonna be receptive to being coached. And if you're not receptive to being coached, you're not going to be able to continue the path to becoming your best self, the best version of yourself. And I share that and bring that back full circle to John C. Maxwell. What a wonderful human being, and his law of the lid. And for those of you who may not be familiar with that, I mean, Dr. Brandi, you are really more so the expert on this. So correct me wherever I'm wrong with it. Please give us illumination on it. But simply, the law of the lid works this way. If I stop learning as a leader, then everyone under my charge, everyone whom I have the distinct and great honor of caring for, of leading, their leadership, their efficacy, their future impact can truly be no higher than what my highest level is. So that's the law of the lid, like a lid that you would put on a container. So a lot of things that really go through my mind. A lot of things do go through my mind when I think about that, and I backtest this. And of course, everything that we're talking about today, backtest this across your own experiences professionally and personally. I thought about, what were situations where I didn't push myself to continue learning at the degree that I could have. So I talk about that. John C. Maxwell, great guy, 5 levels of leadership. Don't want to be a spoiler. but I will throw this in for those who haven't read the book. And it is on audiobook as well. So level 1 folks are very much so about a title. Level 5 people are really about people. And I'll just kind of stop right there because I don't want to be a spoiler alert.
I love John Maxwell's books. He has so many out there. I've lost count of how many books he has written over the years, but I know I have consumed many of them, as I'm sure you have as well. And I love what you're sharing with us today, Vernon, because the law of the lid, the leader is the lid, and we cannot take our people any further than we are willing to go. We've got to invest in ourselves,
Absolutely.
invest in our people. And the goal is to stay human-centered and remember that it is the people, not the programs, that make our schools and our organizations great. And so if we are investing in our people and we keep raising the lid as the leader, where can we take our people and our organizations? The sky is the limit, Vernon.
It's really interesting, and I'll bring this back to the educational space. So honored and privileged to have the opportunity to be in thought spaces beyond the educational sector. But for a second, we'll bring this back to the educational sector. And I think there's a lot of talk around what we here in Texas and I'm sure in other parts of the country will call HQ, high quality instructional materials. And those most certainly are important. It's most certainly valuable to have those resources and those tools at our disposal and to have those things become a part of our daily work and our daily reflection. Let me also go ahead and say this, and this connects to AI as well and the burgeoning sector of AI. What HQIM cannot do, what AI cannot do, there's really an AI-proof skill, is to really go ahead and provide value through human interaction. Let me say that again. To provide value through human interaction, it takes a human being to be able to do that. The nuances and the nonverbal communication and I was listening to a podcast. I'm a podcast nerd. Let me go ahead and say that. And of course, we talk about Working Genius, and so I'm a huge Pat Lencioni fan. But on his podcast, one of his podcasts at the table, they were talking about a saying. And so the saying is 70% of taste is smell. Let me repeat that again. 70% of taste is smell. And they use that example to say that, sometimes the thing that we're looking at, we're looking at that thing, but maybe what we're overlooking are the things that contribute to that outcome. And I was at the gym recently and ran into someone I see in the gym from time to time, and he is one of our doctoral professors in the School of Counseling at Texas Wesleyan University. Super great guy. And we were talking, and every time I talk to him, I'm just like, you know what? You make me feel smarter, sir, because I'm always learning from you. And he said, Vernon, and this guy's, he's a very, very sharp individual. He's worked with a lot of different sports teams around really what we would call the field of neuroscience. And he said something that was really confirmation for me. How many of you know that once you hear something 2 or 3 times in 2 or 3 different spaces, that might be something for you to focus on? And someone had mentioned something a ways back to me recently, not that long ago. And he saw him recently, and he said, you know what, Vernon? He said, totally unscripted, folks. Totally unscripted, unsolicited. He said, Vernon, I've really been thinking about some different things as we make this impact and connecting with people across the community. He said, I think that we have too many people that are focused on outcomes, but we're really not thinking about the process and the different processes that lead to these outcomes. And then, me, I told someone recently, I said, if we were in a job interview and they were asking me, what is your weakness? One of them I would probably say is sometimes overthinking, right? I just love to always be thinking. Mine's always at work. When I'm asleep, mine is at work. And I'm always trying to draw connections, recognize patterns. And so I drew a connection to a book. Another book some of your readers may be very, very familiar with, which is Covey's work on the 4 disciplines of execution. And he talks a lot about leading and lagging indicators. And I think sometimes the lens we look through without maybe realizing it in real time, we're looking through the lens of lagging indicators and then asking ourselves, why didn't we see this earlier? It's a lagging indicator. Well, what are we going to do to fix this, right? In quotes, what are we going to do to fix this or remedy this issue? Let's do more of the lagging indicators. Probably not going to help. So let's change the lens and start looking at leading indicators. So for me to bring that around full circle, I've thought a lot about what are those processes? What are those things? And to make another connection here, if I may, with your audience, what a great audience you have, is the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. What are those daily habits? What are those things that we are doing? And then once we start to really bring all of those points together, and all through this overarching lens of what can I do to make other people better, as I've had the great opportunity of having shared with a lot of different audiences across this country. One of them, of course, you were there in North Carolina. I've shared it with folks in Kansas City and on the West Coast as well. Of course, obviously in Texas, going to be doing a conference here in Texas this summer very soon. So preparing for that. And I've shared this with them. We often talk about success. Right? Everybody wants success. But I dare say that through my own lens of experiences professionally and personally, what we really want is a life of fulfillment. And what success does, the role success plays in that is success gives us the opportunity to fully pursue fulfillment. I'll give you an example, give folks a specific example. Some folks will say, well, you know what, Vernon, I want this and this and this, and then I can do this and this and this. And it's really interesting, Dr. Brandi, of course, you know, my undergrad is not in English, so I'm not a grammatical expert. Somebody showed me a picture one time that had a patch and it said grammatical police. We're here to serve. Instead of saying serve and protect, it said we're here to serve and correct. And they had a picture of a pencil. And so not a grammatical expert on that, but you know, we try. And I really think that we don't really lean in and get clarity on the things that we should be doing every day to make other people better. And so when you hear people say, well, if I get this, Vernon, then I'm going to do this. They put that word then in, right? That transition of I get this, then I'm going to do that. But shout out to Joe Sanfilippo. You know, he talks about lead from where you are. And I really challenge people to go ahead and do that and to really think about what's the impact that you can make. I had a conversation with someone recently that does some different things with Salvation Army here locally in the area. Start where you are with what you have. Yes, let me say that again for somebody who's saying, well, you know, Vernon, I'm not, you know, at whatever level like you and Brandi, and I'm not, you know, whatever, right? I'm just going to say this to you. Start with what you have right where you are. You have influence. Here's a quick litmus test. Quick litmus test for everybody listening. And thank you so much, Dr. Brandi, for the opportunity to be here with your audience. I often ask people, I've asked different audiences to do this. I've asked them this question. Is, hey, okay, have a question. Are y'all open to me asking you a question? Sure, Vernon, go ahead and ask us a question. Okay, here's the question, right? The question is this. Have you ever had someone text you or call you and say to you, Brandi, I've got such and such and such and such situation. I need your advice. What would you do? And people say, well, yeah, Vernon, it happens all the time. I said, well, for that person, you were the subject matter expert right there at that point. At that time. And they didn't ask you, well, do you have a degree in this? Do you have a certificate? They didn't, they weren't interested in any of that. You made yourself through your consistent actions in believing in people and caring about people. Let me say that again. Believing about people and caring about people, you made yourself to be a person of value to that individual, and you are authentic. Of course, you and I both know this, the John C. Maxwell podcast, they talk about this all the time, that authenticity is a trust accelerator. And so when we really think about, you know, when I'm real with people in a very loving way, that endears people to us. Yeah. So you have impact right now, folks. And I just want to challenge you right now, right where we are. And of course, go back, listen to this, watch this later. Of course, if you're driving, operating heavy machinery, please do not, you know, be safe.
Right.
Please be safe. We're going to put that disclaimer out there. Please be safe. Go back and watch this later when you're able to do it safely. But I'm going to challenge you right now to really ask yourself, what is it that you are doing right now that is beyond yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. We're perfectly positioned to help the person we once were. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
important to note you talked about your dad not having a lot of formal education. Both
Mm-hmm.
of my parents dropped out of high school, but they went
Mm-hmm.
on to start their own business. They went on to further their growth and their education at a later date so they could start their own businesses, and they were
Mm-hmm.
successful in their own right. And it's, I think, also important to note we all have a story.
Yes.
And that story might be exactly what somebody else needs to hear to get through the adversity or the hardship that they're facing in this moment. Now, I'm going to go back. You were talking a little bit about the 4 disciplines of execution and those lead and lag measures, and how our focus has become too much on outcomes and not enough on process. I am a D on the DISC assessment.
Mm-hmm.
That is my primary style. And that means that I'm decisive, I'm direct, pretty blunt person, but I try to do it with love. I try to do it with care. I try to keep it very human, hope
Right.
fueled. But I bring that conversation back to that, Vernon, because when we're thinking about leadership, we have to know ourselves, we have to grow ourselves, and then we have to build that capacity and take it beyond us and empower the people that we're leading and that we're serving. And so when you look back over your life, what is maybe an adversity or an experience that has really taught you maybe 2 or 3 lessons that you have learned, habits, mindset practices, a way to stay connected with your purpose and your passion? Are there any specific takeaways that you want to share with your audience from your own personal self-reflection and development of self-awareness?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. And again, a great time being here with your audience. One of the things I will share, and of course, a lot of different stories, is that, of course, those that may not necessarily know, for a portion of my life, very early portion of my life, I lived in this little place you've never heard of called Dallas. Look, say that facetiously.
Yeah.
And there is a portion of Dallas that still to this day is one of the most drug infested, crime infested. I mean, it's a very bad part of town. And very early on as a young man, that's where my mother and father had us live. That's what they could afford as they were trying to go ahead and make a better life for us as a family. And I remember us going to, I'm going to date myself when I say this. Oh my goodness. I remember this is back in the days in Texas when we had this store named Kmart.
Okay.
And I remember my mother telling me, she said, son, we're going to go into the grocery store. We're going to get some paper towels. I remember it like it was yesterday. We're going to go in, we're going to get some paper towels, and we're going to come right back out. We're not going to look at any toys. We're going to put stuff in the cart. I mean, this is just what we're going to do. And I will tell you, Brandi, we did that. Went inside, got the paper towels, came right back out. And we came back out. We were walking back to the car, Brandi, and we noticed that the car door was a little ajar. And someone had broken into our car and had stolen the radio. I mean, just that quick. Just that quick. And one Christmas I had some of my Christmas toys stolen. I mean, it was pretty rough. It's pretty rough. So I go back and I visit when I'm in Dallas. I go back and I visit that apartment complex. And that apartment complex is so rough today that true story, I mean, I obviously won't tell you the name of the complex, but if you go to that complex and you stand still for about 5 minutes in the sight of a video camera, there is a loud voice that comes on and says, you are being monitored. Authorities may be contacted.
My.
It's a pretty rough spot. There used to be a show, I will say this, and then I won't say anymore because I don't want to identify the complex, but there was a show many years ago on this network called the A&E Network. And the show was called, some reviewers may have seen it, the show was called Dallas SWAT. And so is the adventures of the Dallas Police Department SWAT team. So I was watching it because my late father was in law enforcement for many, many years, over 30 years. And so I'm watching it, and everything. And so they pull up to this complex and they're like, hey, we're getting ready to go ahead and bust some drug dealers at this complex. So they're, cameraman's following to the complex. They pull up to the complex, Dr. Brandi, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's the complex we used to live at.
No.
So, as a mentor of mine shared with me years ago, he said, Vernon, it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And I want to say this right now. And what a phenomenal story, Brandi, about your parents that no, they didn't finish high school at that. They had not finished at that time in their lives, but they didn't stop there. They didn't stay there, Brandi. It's not where you start, folks. It's where you finish. So there may be someone listening to this right now that says, you know what, Vernon? I didn't do this. I didn't do this. Let me tell you about the long list of my failures and the things that I wish I could go back in life and redo. How many folks have a list like that? I've got a list of some of those things.
Absolutely.
Right? Just being totally real and authentic with your audience. I do.
Yeah.
But I say this is what I say to everyone listening or watching or whatever kind of way you are consuming this content. I say this to you. And please, if you don't hear anything else that I've said today, and what an honor it is to have been on this show, please hear me when I tell you it's not where you start in life. It's where you finish. Fast forward many years down the road, and you're going to meet this person named Dr. Brandi, and you're going to meet all these other speakers and all these people who travel literally around the country and around the world, and you're going to be able to call these people personal friends, and this is what your world will be. You will be in the thought space of impact makers. Brandi, I probably would have looked at somebody then and been like, you know what? You need to go see a doctor or something because you're crazy. It cannot be my life.
Right.
But there was a plan.
Yeah.
There was a plan.
Absolutely.
There was.
And along the way, somebody has tapped you on the shoulder. When I speak to audiences, I say that leadership is not simply the transfer of information, it's the transfer of belief. And we have an awesome responsibility, a privilege, an honor of transferring that belief. I can help you see some greatness within you that maybe you don't see within yourself. You can do the same thing for me. But so often we go through life, and I've been guilty of this, Vernon. When I was climbing the ladder, I was social worker, principal, superintendent. I was so focused on the tasks. I was focused on making sure that I was doing all of the things that I needed to be doing. And I wasn't always present. I wasn't always where my feet were. I wasn't always connected to my purpose. I wasn't always enjoying the journey.
Yep.
And I think that if I could give the listeners 2 takeaways today, it would be 1, I think you should keep your circle small. That's just my opinion. Keep your circle small, but pick those people in your life that are going to be grace givers and truth tellers, and they're going to help you be the best version of you. And so the second thing that I want the listeners to hear is achievement without alignment can become a trap.
Repeat that again, Dr. Brandi. That's good. There's some people here right now. I know you're probably like, oh, this is another Dr. Brandi episode. Let me tell you something. This is confirmation for somebody out there. And I'm going to say it's probably confirmation for a lot of folks.
When you have lived these experiences, this isn't just coming off of a textbook or coming from nowhere. This is coming from lived experience. Achievement without alignment becomes a trap. You get to that point where everybody looking at your life sees you as success. And I'll say this, I got to that superintendent role, and when I walked away and I told my brother that I walked away, he's like, what? Why did you do that? Why would you do that? But in order to find joy in the journey, in order to really have that meaning, Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, another book, we're just throwing out these book titles left. But in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl reminds us that in life, if you know your why, you can bear almost anyhow.
Yes.
And when we're connected with who God created us to be, and we're living that life of meaning, there's fulfillment, there's joy, there's passion. That's what we need. We need fulfillment in our life. We need meaning in our life. But in order to truly have that, we have to have alignment.
You know, it's so interesting. We're not going to, folks. But this episode could be like 3 or 4 hours because I could just sit here and listen to you talk. This is great. I was telling this doctor friend of mine at the gym that I had mentioned earlier in the episode, I was telling him when I was at the gym recently and I was talking with him that we had to stop talking there because they're like, we're here at the gym to work out. So we get so caught up in talking because the dialogues are so great. But I told him, I said, confirmation, right? You mentioned two things that I would be remiss if I did not speak on them and really affirm you and thank you and express gratitude to you for saying, you young folks out there, and I'm going to date myself when I say this, right? I was talking to one of the great honors that I have as president of the alumni board at Tex West is talking to our incoming freshmen. So I have this thing called Ram Camp because we're the Texas Wesleyan Rams. And so every summer we have incoming freshmen get together for their freshman orientation. So typically when my schedule allows, I have some schedule availability and bandwidth, I'll go talk to them. And so I was talking to them about some different things and I mentioned cassette tapes and they looked at me, Dr. Brandon, like, what is a cassette? And then I say, well, you know what? I've dated myself. But so I'm going to try to stay more current with the young folks.
With that, though, Vernon, I got to chime in just for a
Sure.
second. When I was a principal at a middle school, I was talking to a student. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were in the gym, and I was sharing with her a story similar to what you were sharing. And I looked at her and I said, oh, but I'm dating myself. And she looked at me with this confused look on her face.
How do you do that?
Imagine, 6th grade student, Mrs. Kelly, why would you date yourself? I love kids. They're so
right. So is like, what is this thing called contextual clues?
Right. It was great.
So, right. So, I say this is in the honor that I have had and such a distinct honor to have mentored several of the athletes at Texas Wesleyan. One of the things that I have shared with them for years, and I've been a mentor in the football mentor group since 2019, and I've shared with them this: make your network big and keep your circle small. So when I heard you say keep your circle, I was like,
yeah,
Dr. Brandi speaking my language. That's what we're telling these young folks, because I tell them, I say, that's great that, we're able to go ahead and do some things, me and my contemporaries are. But as a mentor told me, he said, Vernon, that's great. You're doing those different things and your contemporaries are doing those different things. He's a little older gentleman. He's in his 70s. He said, but the focus is not necessarily about what you all are doing. The real focus and win for humanity is the next generation. And so hearing what you said about keep your circle small, I believe the young folks use this term 1000%. So I'm going to say 1000%, not 100%, 1000%. So we often tell young folks, make your network big. We're always meeting people, always, every single second. Make your network big, and we're always into branding. We're always branding. Right now, where you are, you're a brand, but keep your circle small because that circle is comprised of people who will truly be with you for life. I believe the young folks may use the term day ones or real ones. And so those are your day ones. Those are your real ones. Those are the folks that truly will be with you. And I'm going to make another connection here for your listening audience. Those are the people that, again, if you back test it against different experiences you've had professionally and personally, you will say that regardless of what the situation was in life, those are the people who truly loved me and cared about me as a human being.
And we need to identify those people in the good times so that when that adversity does strike, we can go to them, and they will. They'll be the grace givers and the truth tellers in our lives. I had another guest on the show several months ago, Ben Woods, and he's a pastor and he has a powerful story, but that phrase comes from Ben. He just reminds us that we need those grace givers and those truth tellers in our lives. And I borrowed that countless times when I've spoken to folks. Let's pause for just a moment because I want to tell you about a partner who truly aligns with the heart of this podcast, Conversary. Here on Lead with Hope, we talk a lot about clarity of purpose, clarity of voice, and clarity of direction. And that's exactly where Conversary comes in. They help leaders, educators, and change makers uncover the story behind their work and share it in a way that feels honest, meaningful, and deeply aligned with who they are. If you've ever felt the nudge to write a book, refine your message, or build a brand that actually reflects your values, not just your resume, Conversary doesn't rush you or box you in. They walk alongside you, helping you shape your story with intention and integrity. A big thank you to Craig Williams and Conversary for being a legacy sponsor of this podcast, and for investing in stories that matter. Because when we share our stories with clarity and hope, real change happens. We talk a lot on this show about hope and the power of hope, why hope matters. For me, that goes all the way back when I was 15 years old, and the community that I lived in, they really supported us when my brother Brandon drowned. And that's what showed me what hope in action looks like. That's what inspired me to go into education. That's why I've stepped away from the school district and being a formal school leader. And now I'm doing the work I'm doing with speaking and training and coaching. And so, Vernon, I'd love to ask my guest this question.
Sure, please do. Hopefully I have an answer.
I 1000% believe you'll have an answer to this question. But Vernon, right now, what's giving you hope in the world?
My ability to go ahead and impact humanity, and not only individually, but as part of a team. And I will tell you this, Brandi, that, we mentioned earlier, we kind of said it in jest that my mind is always working. Even when I'm asleep, my mind is working.
Yes.
I was sharing this with someone recently, another professional in the space, and I told this professional, a local leader, somebody who has really kind of done some great things in the community. And I was sharing with them that, at this point in my life, more so than ever before, I have come to the conclusion, dare I use the word, again, not a grammatical expert, but dare I use the word epiphany. And I've come to that epiphany, and the epiphany simply is this: my life is best when it is in service to others. And then I connect that to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I had the distinct and great honor 2 years ago to have met his son, MLK III, in person at an event at Dallas City Hall. And that was just, my goodness, it was phenomenal. And I asked him about one of his father's most famous quotes, which simply is, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing in service for others? And I think about that often. And I came to that point, that epiphany, where because how many of you know that you'll see people go ahead and post stuff on social media? I'm living my best life. And that's good. That's nice. We like that, right? Everybody's heard that. I'm living my best life. And that's great. That's great. That's cool. For me personally, I came to that epiphany where my best life is making humanity better through service. And every single time, Dr. Brandi, every single time, I'm not saying that I have all of the data for it, but I am going to tell you this from an anecdotal standpoint, from an experiential standpoint, professionally and personally. Every single time that I expressed gratitude and I led with gratitude and thanks, get that from my good friend Tom Murray. Great guy. He said, always lead with gratitude, lead with thanks. And then I ask myself rhetorical question, of course, self-talk. How many of you know that self-talk is real? It's very real. Yeah. I ask myself the question, Vernon, what can you do to make this person, this organization, or this environment better? And I share this with our athletes at Texas Wesleyan as they're developing into the great young professionals that obviously they are in real time, and that they will be down the road even greater, which is to do this. Think about how they can deliver value. And that not only think about how they can deliver value, but that when they consistently do that, we talked about James Clear and Atomic Habits, right? When they consistently deliver value to people, guess what happens, folks? Their reputation and brand becomes that of a value person, a person that delivers value. And I must say, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our alumni board vice president, Lorena Vargas, and she and I talk about a lot of different things from time to time in the space, the community service space. Because how many of you know that we are individuals, but we live in this thing called a community, and we always want to come together, all of us together, and make the community better through synergy. Lorena does this in the different spheres of influence that she's involved in throughout the community, and her leadership and all those different endeavors. And I've learned from that. How many of you know that we're always learning from people? We should be. You mentioned my daughter earlier. I told my daughter, if you ever meet somebody who says they know everything, Just say thank you, turn around, and sprint away as fast as possible because we're always learning. But really, to develop relationships with people and to always think about this rather than my first move being, what am I going to ask this person for? The first move instead be, what thing of value am I going to offer this person? Not to try to get some other kind of thing or some other manipulative kind of thing, but simply this. And this is a challenge and a charge to people. Some people may respond to the word challenge. Some people may respond to the word charge, whatever fits you. But really, I'm going to put this out there for folks listening to this. Develop relationships with people. Develop a curiosity about the work that people are doing. There's an artist who has a song that's called about levels. He says there are levels to this. So there are levels to leadership, right? And so in one of those intermediary levels years ago that I was in, what I found in that work, and some of you may be in work like this right now. Of course, Brandi, you were in work like this as the superintendent. It's so critical to really be tuned in and keen about those relationships across the community and community building. Because how many of you know that as your levels of impact and influence increase, sphere of influence is typically increasing. And so we often say this to people, especially the young students there at Texas Wesleyan, which is become a person of value. And whenever you meet people, always be thinking, as you're listening and as you're curious about the work they're doing, always be thinking, what can I deliver to this person that could be of potentially of value to them? So the one question that years ago I was really introduced to by a mentor of mine, we all have mentors, I have several mentors myself, is simply this. And I'll tell you a funny quick story with it, is to ask people, what are you working on right now, professionally or personally, that you're absolutely passionate about? Just absolutely passionate about. And the first time I remember, this was in more of, we were keeping it in an educational context, but so I've been privileged to have asked that question in a lot of different sectors, even those obviously outside of education. But so the first time I was at this elementary school. And so I go to this elementary school and I'm visiting this school and just talking with different people. And I was talking with one of the teachers there at the school. And I said to this teacher, I said, hey, I have a question for you. And of course, yeah, sure, Mr. Wright, what's the question? The question I asked them was simply this: what are you working on right now that you're absolutely passionate about? I mean, you stay up, you get up early in the morning, you stay up late at night, you're just absolutely passionate about this work, and you're not getting paid extra for it. What type of work is that? What are you doing right now? Tell me about it. I'm here to listen. I'm curious. The person stopped, Brandi. True story. I could tell you, I take you exactly to that place, could take you to that school, could take you to the room where that person taught.
Yeah.
It has been many years ago. Person's not even there anymore, but I could take you to where that room was. And the person turned and looked at me, and they, in a very respectful way, the most respectful ways, looked at me and they said to me, Mr. Wright, asked me, Mr. Wright, is this a trick question? I said, well, no, it's not true. Why would you think this is a trick question? And because I was curious, right? Being persistent in that spirit of curiosity. And the person looked at me, Brandi, and they said this, because in my whole life, I've never had anyone ask me that question.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness, why are we? And so the takeaway for me in real time, folks, the takeaway for me at the time was simply this: why are we not asking each other about the work that we're absolutely passionate about? And why are we not sharing that with each other in these dialogues and these conversations? Because typically there are going to be some commonalities in there. I didn't say a perfect match all the time, every time, but there are going to be some commonalities in that. Well, and I know some people might ask, well, Vernon, how can you say that with such great confidence? And I say it this way because typically the things that we're absolutely passionate about, guess what, folks? I'm going to state what's probably extremely obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Typically those things involve people beyond us. So maybe, throw this out there for your listeners, maybe one of the quickest paths to fulfillment in life is taking our own lives and committing them to causes that elevate humanity. And of course, those causes would be beyond ourselves.
So good. And it takes me back to some of the things that we've talked about throughout this conversation. For me today, Vernon, the takeaway is in life and in leadership, you have to know yourself to grow yourself.
Yes.
And then you went on to talk about the fact that we need to start today. Lead from wherever
Hmm.
you are. Share your story. Turn any pain that you might have into a purpose because somebody needs that. Somebody today needs that authenticity and they need to know how you overcame the obstacles you faced in life. And then
Hmm.
the other thing that I loved that you said, Vernon, keep your network big, but keep your circle small. That's one I'm going to use. That's a good one. I'm going to upcycle
Yes.
that
Well,
one.
look, I've been telling our athletes, particularly our football athletes at Texas Wesleyan, go Rams. But I've been telling them that since 2019. Yeah, because they meet in life, you're going to meet a ton of different people.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your trusted core, your trusted group of people, keep the network small because I will share this as a story. I won't name the individual, but have grown to know a former NFL player.
Mhm.
Okay. I know a few former NFL players, and one of them is all of them are accomplished people, but one in particular that I'm speaking of, home. I used to collect sports cards home. And the person looked at me and they're like, nobody wants my rookie card. Like, oh, yes, sir. They do. They do. It's worth quite a bit. But we talk about how when you start to advance in life, sometimes people approach you and they want you to be they're your new best friend.
Right.
But you have to use wisdom and judgment and discernment
Yeah.
because people just want what you have. They don't want you as a human being. And I'll leave your listeners with this. Many, many, many years ago, when I had a lot less gray and more hair on my head, but I used to be in coaching. I coached for a little bit. And one of the things that we often say at Texas Wesleyan is this: you can be one of two types of coaches, one of two types. You can be a transactional coach. What can you do for the team? Are your grades right? What's your eligibility like? All of those nuances, right? And those things are important. They're very important. But sometimes if maybe somebody which I have worked with a lot of players like this, um, in this now my seventh year of having been in the mentor group, you sometimes players encounter this thing called life. How many of you have encountered this thing called life? I know I have.
Yeah.
And they've encountered, of course, you have Dr. Brandi, they've encountered this thing called life. And people who are transactional, please hear me when I say this, people who are transactional, when you can no longer do anything for them, they lose interest in you. Let me say that again. When you no longer can do anything for them, they lose interest in you. So some of you right now, professionally and personally, that was confirmation for you because you've been around some people who are very transactional. They're only interested in you for what you can do for them. The other thing we say is that there's another type of coach, and the other type of coach is what we call transformational. And your transformational coaches are the coaches who understand that, yes, we're playing sports, but there's going to come a point in time where when sports is over, you're going to have to continue in this thing called life. And we're here to prepare you for life. We all want to be transformational in somebody else's life. Let me repeat that again. We all want to be transformational in somebody else's life. And when we commit our lives to that, when we can joy and fulfillment, that I mean, you can have millions of dollars and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But that joy and fulfillment that comes from knowing that I made somebody else's life better, that is just, I mean, that's just marvelous.
Yeah.
I live for that.
That is why you and I do the work that we do, and
Yes.
we travel and we speak and we coach and
Yes.
we train. But it brings me to your third and final point there is choose to get your eyes off of yourself and become a person who adds value to other people. One of these days, we are all going to retire, resign, pass away. And the goal is to leave a legacy that outlives us. And when you choose to be a person of value, that's exactly what you're doing. You're becoming a transformational leader. And some people say, well, I'm not a leader. You're not talking to me. Well, yes, you are. We are all a leader in some right. At a minimum, you're leading yourself. You might be leading your family. You might be leading a classroom or a school or an organization. We are all leaders, and we can choose to start where we are and add value to somebody else's life, practice that habit of gratitude and be thankful for all of the blessings that we have in our life. And I think that completely rewires our brain and helps us to have a
Hmm.
mindset that really centers us on what matters most in this world.
Absolutely. And is it okay if I throw out another quick freebie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, all right. I'm gonna throw
We
out
love
another
freebies.
freebie for your audience. I was at just lessons, right? Lessons, stories, things that I reflect on. So I was at a community event. This has been many years ago. I was at a community event, and different people were there, and of course, different people from the community, and just it truly was a community event. One of the things that we have locally in Texas, and of course, it's all across the nation, which is basically what you call like a national night out.
Mm.
Okay, community just comes together. Well, anyway, I was at an event that was very similar to that. So, you had different leaders and things from the community. And of course, you also too had different people from law enforcement, fire department, first responders that were there, and have had the honor of having come to know several first responders over the years. Some of them I've worked with directly. Of course, my late father was in law enforcement for many, many years. So one of these individuals was there, and there were some people in leadership that were also there within that department. And I noticed that this person in leadership stopped talking to these other people. And when they saw this person that I was talking to, they came over directly to this person and said to this person, I mean, this place is full of people. And they said to this person, I am so glad you're here. It's so great to see you. Thank you for everything you're doing. You're making a difference. I mean, they specifically went to this person and said that. And it was not performative. How many of you folks know that some folks do stuff so they can say, okay, did you see what I did? Did you see that? This was not performative. This was the real deal. And went over and said that to that person, and then they turned away and they walked off. And this person was not, and this is to amplify. So my good friend John Carippo says this is to plus one what you just said, which is this person was not the person who had the highest title in that space. They did not have one of the highest places on that org chart. So me, I'm always trying to learn from people. What can I learn? What are things like? I'm always trying to learn. Hopefully this is a safe place. I'm kind of a nerd about those different things. So I have a keen interest in that, right? So I asked this person once this person very high in leadership walked off, I asked this person, I was like, wow, you had XYZ person come over here and specifically greet you in a crowd of probably what was at this event, probably about 100 or 150, just that 150 of just local leaders. I mean, that's a pretty big group of just local leaders at a community event. And I asked the person, I said, how did you do that? I am so interested in that. Like, you get somebody to come over. I mean, you would have thought this person was the mayor of this city or whatever. And this is really the bonus here that I wanted to share with your audience. It's such a great time having been here with them. And I looked at the person looked at me, and they said, right? They said, you know what? 3 words, right? And how many of you know that somebody's when they call you by your last name, they're being real with you. All right. Some of you, that may resonate with some of y'all. And they said, right, 3 words. And I said, okay, I want to know what the 3 words are. Tell me. I'm ready. How many of you remember those Christmas commercials when you'd have the picture of the person on the commercial, the video of the person on the commercial, and they would be at the doors before they open them? They'd be waiting for them to open. They would say, open, open, open. And I'm there like waiting for the 3 words, right? And he looked at me and he said this 3 words: invest in relationships.
Yes.
And I was like, what did you say? And he said, right, invest in relationships. And he said, what I adopted and what I challenged myself to do many years ago was just invest in relationships. Everywhere I go, I'm investing in relationships, asking people, hey, what are you doing? How can I help you with that? Not, can you give me this? No, how can I help you with what you're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, and I just made that was like my thing. And that became my brand. And people know me as that throughout the community. It was such a lesson for me many, 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 many years ago. And that opened up many different avenues for that. And that person now has done many, many, many big things. I mean, very high up in office for some local leaders and just done some phenomenal work for the community.
Investing in relationships, that's what it's all about. And so many educators really do have that as almost a superpower. They know how to connect with
Hmm.
students, and there are some educational leaders that are listening to this, and they really understand what connection requires. Another great book by John Maxwell is Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. As we're closing out this podcast episode, can you tell the listeners how they would get in touch with you if they wanted to just learn more about your work?
Right. Well, maybe a part two in the future. We'll
There
see.
you
We'll
go.
see what the listeners say about it. Maybe a part
Yes,
two in the future.
good idea.
All the socials, The Right Leader, THEWRIGHTLEADER. I'm primarily these days on Instagram and on LinkedIn. Honored to have a place and a platform on both of those. For those that may be on X, I'm on X as well. The Right Leader across all those different platforms. And of course, for those who may say, you know what, Vernon, man, this is great. This is cool. Let me go ahead and learn more about your body of work. Watch. Here's how you do it. Here's the website. Very original, right? TheRightLeader.com. So go to that. Look at the different things that I'm so distinctly honored and privileged to be involved in, and I'm humbled by it, Brandi. I got to tell you, I'm humble. So to have started out as that kid who we came back out to the car from Kmart, Brandi, and the radio was gone. it was gone, and we were just like, we had this moment where we were just like, these people were like, they were watching us, and you go through life and you're unaware, right? That they were watching. But to have gone from that drug infested, crime infested complex to where I am today, to have the honor of having shared with so many different people across this country, I'm humbled. So The Right Leader across all the different platforms, therightleader.com is the website. Reach out, folks. And I just want to go ahead and say this to you. Thank you, Dr. Brandi, for the opportunity to go ahead and share with your audience and those who might say, Vernon, let's go ahead and talk some more. Reach out to me. Let's do it. I often say this, and this is my tagline. We're here to educate and elevate humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. And I look forward to the next conference that we're at together. We'll have to
Indeed.
go for coffee and talk more about all the things leadership, self-awareness, so on and so forth. So once again, Vernon, thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you.
That's a wrap for today's episode of Lead with Hope. Remember, the world needs your leadership, and change starts with you. Fuel your life with hope, embrace your purpose, and shine your light for others. If this episode inspired you, I'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to give us a 5-star rating and share it. Every review helps spread hope and empowers more leaders to rise. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep leading with hope.